Good morning to all and welcome to the first SSIS release of 2023, number 23.1. My name is Ross. I will be your host today. And as always, I've got a group of folks surrounding me to help with presenting. And we'll start out with some introductions. And I'll start with Molly. Go ahead and introduce yourself and then pass it to the next presenter, please.
Good morning. I'm Molly Kaler, one of the SSIS fiscal subject matter experts in the Business Operations Division, and I will hand it off to Sam, my partner.
Hi, I am Sam Breidenbach, fiscal subject matter expert with Business Operations, and next up will be Marcia.
Hi, I'm Marcia Risk. I am one of the worker SSIS subject matter experts, and I will pass it to Cynthia.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Cynthia Shapolsky. I'm the SSIS Business Operations Supervisor. Ross, I think that's it this morning.
Well, we've got one more. We've got our special guest, so go ahead.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I apologize.
Hi, I'm Regina Acevedo. I'm a behavioral health researcher for the BHDH division. And I just want to thank the SSIS team for allowing me to speak briefly on children's mental health screening today.
Great, thank you. All right, for some reason it's not allowing me to move my screen. Give me a second, see if I can try a different way. There we go. All right, thank you. So the agenda for today is we've already taken care of the welcome and introduction. So we've already got one thing off the list. We've got an announcement. We've got some housekeeping to talk about, of course, and the Tennessen Warning for y'all to read because we are going to be recording this. And we have the release updates, the reason why we're all here. And then towards the end, we're going to give a shout out to the mentor of the month, and we'll have some closing announcements that you want to stay tuned for.
This is Molly. I'm no longer seeing the PowerPoint. Is it just me here?
All right.
Yeah,
maybe that's why it's moving so well for me, huh? All right, gotta try sharing again. Let me know if you see when you see it or.
We see it.
It's
just not in presentation mode.
Okay. Are we better?
Looks good.
Now I'm back to where I can't move though. Hey, all right. So we're back to the agenda, and I guess the next thing is we'll have the announcement from the children's mental health screen.
Yes, I have two announcements. One is just a reminder that all CMH Screen 2 completed status. So for each screen, to complete that for the entire calendar year, even prior to February, February 22nd release date, when this status was entered into SSIS with these fields with the screening tool score referred for DA completed, and then, if applicable, known the date of the diagnostic assessment. And that's just a reminder that even though it wasn't released until February, still enter the information prior to February 22nd, which would include January 1 to February 21st, and of course the entire calendar year. So that's just a reminder. And then the second announcement is an addition of an exemption. So you'll see, I believe it's this Thursday will be the release date for this, exempt receiving children's mental health case management. And that is to align with the exemptions that juvenile justice is collecting. For some reason, there was a discrepancy, there was inconsistency. So in order to align the data, to eventually share the data so it's public, so that everyone can see the data, the goal was just to bring consistency and make sure that the same data points are being captured. And if, of course, more than one exemption can apply to a child, so in that case, you would pick one exemption. And I believe you cannot pick more than one exemption for the exempt options. So you'd pick just one to capture that child who's exempt. And that's everything I have. My email is regina.acevedo@state.mn.us if you have any questions. And thank you.
All right. Well, thanks, Regina. I'm going to go over the housekeeping rules real quick before we get started, although we've already gotten started. Attendees have been muted upon entry. To speak, please raise your hand using the reaction emoji at the bottom of your screen, and you'll be unmuted by the panelists, and we can take your questions. Questions can also be submitted using the chat feature, which will be monitored by our wonderful SSIS BizOps staff. Closed captioning can be enabled using your CC buttons located on the bottom left of your screen. This session is being recorded and will be posted on the Minnesota Child Welfare Training Academy website in the near future. And a follow-up document will be prepared and distributed to attendees 7 to 10 days following the WebEx event. This is that Tennessen Warning. We'll give you a moment or two to read this over since we are recording, and we'll get going here, back up again here in about 2 minutes. Hopefully that was long enough for everybody to have a chance to read through the Tennessen Warning. If not, you can read it again if you need to pull this presentation up at a later date. We'd like to thank some of our counties, the Stearns and Sherburne counties, and the Des Moines Valley Health and Human Services for piloting for us this SSIS version 23.1. And we are always looking for some volunteers for upcoming SSIS pilots. Please reach out to Cynthia Shapolsky if your agency can assist or if you have any questions. Cynthia is going to talk a little bit about some positions that are open.
Thanks, Ross. So good morning. We just wanted to mention, because we have 2 positions that are currently open. The first one is our SSIS change coordination position. This one closes today. And this is really, we would say, a really key position for coordinating all of our changes from projects to small enhancements and ensuring that we're meeting all of the standards for DHS, and will be coordinating a lot of work with all of the different policy areas that we work with. And so it's a really exciting position. And this one closes today. And our second one is that we have a temporary fiscal subject matter expert. This one closes on the 23rd, so just in a couple days. And this is an opportunity to really lead the fiscal work for Family First Prevention Services, and be in a position to do some statewide leadership for this fiscal work through September 2025. So if anybody has questions, feel free to reach out and reach out to me. And we're really excited to get these filled and have some excellent people join our excellent team. So thanks so much, Ross.
Well, thank you. Are y'all ready to get started on what the release looks like? Here we go. Back to Cynthia.
Thank you so much. All right, so this release, we have a few changes for adult protective services. And before we talk about those, I really just wanted to mention two things. One, that all of these updates can be found on the What's New in the SSIS resource page, and that specifically related to adult protection, we have a new adult protection SSIS user guide, which is available on the SSIS resource page on the APS training page. So we're pretty excited about that. All right, on to adult protection changes. First, the program on APS intakes and work groups can no longer be changed to any other program. And second, any adult who's the subject of an adult maltreatment report and referred by the MARC is required to have an adult protection intake or assessment work group. These system changes were really made to support the policy that was established by the Minnesota legislature to serve any of the adults who do meet the APS program criteria. And the change also supports tracking outcomes and resources for any of those adults referred for adult protective services. Let me see here. Also, if an APS report isn't accepted for meeting criteria, you can identify, when you identify that they do have other needs, of course, you can offer other programs to provide support to them. And you can do that through closing the APS intake, creating a new intake for them for whatever program area that they need, adult services, adult mental health, or so on. Then the closed adult maltreatment report won't be accessible by the new intake or assessment program, but it will live on in that adult maltreatment report that you can access. All right. All right, for this release, we have two new determinations that are available, allegation determinations for adult maltreatment, either no determination, adult protective services needed, or no determination, adult protective services not needed. And an additional change for our allegation determinations is that neglect self list has these four options: no determination, not a vulnerable adult; no determination, investigation not possible; no determination, adult protective services needed; or no determination, adult protective services not needed. So that is what our list includes now with this release. All right. And our all other allegations determinations includes false, inconclusive, no determination, not a vulnerable adult; no determination, investigation not possible or substantiated. All right, adult maltreatment appeals. So this is now filtered for allegations and includes false and conclusive, no determination, not a VA, or substantiated. So some small changes for our Adult Protective Services area. And again, please refer to the Minnesota Adult Protection Policy Manual for any specific questions on policy that might help inform any of the questions that you have, or you can also refer to the new Adult Protection SSIS User Guide that's on the SSIS resource page.
All right, so we're going to move into child maltreatment. So there was a change made on the allegation grid of the child maltreatment screens. So the determination date and severity columns within the allegation grid of the child maltreatment report were previously available as options in the grid. However, because of course they can have multiple values because there's allegation detail information, they have always remained blank. So these have just been removed just to avoid further confusion. Next screen. And so we also made some changes to the continuous placement screens. On the removal conditions tab, a safe place for newborns, relinquishment of parental rights was relabeled to anonymous infant abandonment, safe place for newborns under 7 days. So that change was made because there was some people were choosing this particular removal condition when children were more than 7 days old, which shouldn't apply in those instances. And so it's just to ensure that people are choosing the removal condition when it actually applies so that the data will be correct. For the discharge reasons, reestablishment of the legal parent relationship was also relabeled to reestablishment of the legal parent and child relationship after TPR. So workers were choosing this removal condition and discharge reason incorrectly, which were causing skewed data. So similarly, just to try to ensure that people are choosing it when it's appropriate. Hopefully these changes will make it more clear when to use these options. The discharge reason of residing with non-removal parent guardian was also added due to the change how AFCARS was defining reunification. Oh, I see the sound problem. Okay, I'm going to try to get closer. WebEx doesn't like my audio. All right, hopefully everyone can hear me better. Thanks, Sue. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. Thanks, Ross. So we're going to talk about the QRTP stuff again, the extended placement reviews. And so we've talked about these for a couple, actually, I believe maybe the last 2 releases, we touched on these a little bit, but things were pushed out. So I wanted to make sure that we touched on it again, since some of this is actually coming out this time. So the QRTP Calculate Review Period Detail button will be activated during the SSIS 23.1 release. The button is used to allow SSIS to calculate that review period detail for the QRTP extended placement review without the need to manually try to figure out details in hopes that this will avoid costly mistakes. So the function will track the current most recent continuous placement, the applicable certified QRTP placement, the age of the and both.
Marsha, we're still having audio issues with you. Darn it.
Shoot. Okay. All right. Is that better? We test this out every time, just so you know. But apparently I have to be right on top of this. Okay. It'll depend on consecutive days the child is in placement for which the facility is certified by QRTP services. So the function will calculate when it is time to conduct a review based upon that child's age and days in the certified QRTP placement. And the 23.1 release will also include the 30-day alert, which will appear in the worker's reminders and alerts log 30 days prior to the review period to date, notifying the caseworker that an extended placement review needs to be conducted. So of note on this, the calculate review period detail button and the child foster care report both use similar logic for the determination of review period timelines. So it is recommended that the timelines returned by the button remain in order to maintain the claiming timelines. The manual process is still available and unchanged, however, should only be used in consultation with an SSIS mentor and the SSIS help desk, or if an issue has been identified with the calculation for a specific child. So I really want you to use that button and let the system figure it out, because it's really easy. It's a complicated process and we don't want you to end up with costly mistakes. Review help text has also been updated with detailed EPR timelines and information for both the manual process and the button calculation. Okay. The QRTP review does not work if the BizOrg for the placement does not have an active license or if there's not a current Lindex link linked in the BizOrg. So, on the BizOrg, the system is going to alert the worker with a pop-up, and here we show the warning message. So the worker may go on to save the placement, but should be sure EPR can occur. Oh my goodness. All right, I see you guys are having trouble. I'm not sure how to fix that. And I think the screeching noise is not mine. Russ, do you want to try muting and see if that helps? I think that helps with the screeching. Can you hear me okay right now? Okay, thanks, Hannah. All right, maybe that was the issue. Maybe it was just kind of overtaking my voice. Okay, I'm gonna try again. Let's go on to the next slide. Thanks. Okay, so permanency, ensuring accurate calculations. So, okay, yep, okay, looks like it's to calculate correctly. The QRTP placement end dates need to be entered as the actual day that the youth or the child leaves the facility. So we mentioned this again, I believe, at our last release coffee talk. So I just want to make that note again. Make sure that you're entering the actual day out, right? The day they're leaving the facility, not entered, I'm sorry, it's not entered as out the day before. I think there was a few agencies. You may have placements and the next placement starting the same date, right? Not entering the actual day out as the end date will risk that the EPR consecutive and non-consecutive days are not being counted accurately. For example, a non-consecutive EPR may be counting days across multiple QRT placement spans. And to do this correctly, the system needs to be able to look at all the days in each QRTP placement, and then it will subtract. If you're also entering your placements and you're already subtracting that day out, the actual count is going to be off. All right, I'm checking my cables here. I see your message there, Cindy. Yeah, it works for everything except for WebEx. So I'm really sorry. Seems like all the cables are good. Are you guys able to hear me? All right, I'm going to try to continue here. I'm so sorry. Ross, will you go to the next slide? Thanks. Oh, it's still cutting in and out. I'm not sure how to fix this. Let's see, when I first start talking, it's okay, but then it fades out. I will try to speak louder. I am like right on top of this microphone, so I'm not sure, but I'm going to try to keep speaking louder. Please keep letting us know if you can't hear me. Maybe we'll have to try something a little different here. So I just wanted to point out in red here that calculate review period detail button again. So if a QRTP placement closes after that 30-day alert would be generated, even if prior to the review period to date, it is still recommended that the QRTP extended placement review is completed before closing the placement. And this is QRTP placement within the same continuous placement episode. If the child or youth returns to a QRTP placement within the same continuous placement episode, the non-consecutive days continue to accumulate. So another alert is not going to be generated, increasing the possibility that the EPR would be missed if you decide to wait until after the next QRTP has begun. We've said this before, but we just want to make sure that people remember, even if that placement ends with this QRTP, if your continuous placement is continuing and you were within the 30 days, so the alert generated, you want to still complete that extended placement review so that in the future, if this child goes back into another QRTP, you don't end up with a shortened timeline and you might possibly miss an extended placement review. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. So remember, the QRTP extended placement review approval review dates are system generated and cannot be edited. This makes it especially important to ensure that workers are submitting the extended placement review approval submissions with adequate time for their agency approvers to review and approve within those 30 days, just before the review date will need to be dated on or before the review period to date for the extended placement review to be considered timely. Next slide. So here's a list of the various effects on claiming for the different extended placement reviews. And as you can see, the initial extended placement review is going to be the most critical to ensure it is completed timely. If not completed or is late, claiming will stop going forward. So after the extended placement review's review period to date, when an EPR is missed or late. So missing any EPR stops the agency from being able to claim federal Title IV-E reimbursement for the remainder of that continuous placement. The specific date that claiming stops varies depending on which review was missed. So the extended placement review due date forward for initial reviews, or from the first of the month in which the extended placement review was due for subsequent reviews. Timely denials of extended placement reviews apply to that particular QRTP placement only. So the approver is saying in a denial that the child needs to be transitioned out of that specific setting, and the agency has up to 30 days to accomplish the transition ability to claim for those 30 days. They would be able to claim for a new QRTP setting during the same continuous placement should the child need that again, as long as all the other requirements are still being met. Next slide. Sorry, next slide. Okay, so I took a little screenshot here of what what it's going to look like for the new alert I mentioned earlier. So the QRTP EPR alerts will generate when a child is or has been in a potentially certified QRTP placement and within 30 days of the end of a review period to date. The alert will indicate the expected and when the review. It is possible for multiple timelines to trigger alerts on the same date. And in these situations, the consecutive timeline supersedes the non-consecutive timeline. So if you're getting multiple, look for that consecutive timeline. The alert message will read as shown here, and the wording in the brackets will autofill. So I kept the brackets just so you could see how it will look and which words will be like autofilled from your information. So it will say, in order to claim for Title IV-E funding, a completed, and then it'll show the review timeline, QRTP extended placement review for, and whatever the child's name is due by, and whatever that review through date is. And the review timelines are the 6 consecutive months, which is 180 days, 6 non-consecutive months, 180 days, 12 consecutive months, 360 days, and 18 non-consecutive months, which is 540 days. It is recommended to complete the review once the alert is generated, even if the child or youth is moved from that QRTP setting before the review through date is reached, as long as
Marcia, we missed you after as long as.
Great. All right, as long as the continuous, this, as I noted earlier, a future potentially certified QRTP placement within the same continuous placement would cause a review to be due upon entry into SSIS, increasing your chances for the review to be late. So remember, while these are worker-specific alerts, another person, such as a supervisor or other mentor in your agency who has been given access to view another user's alerts and reminders, could also use this to use the filters options, the find panel, grouping options, those types of things to easily track who maybe in their unit or who in your division, those kinds of things, depending on how they have their settings, they can track who has those extended placement reviews coming due or are behind on them, who has them late. So I just want to point out on here, and we'll include this in the resources as well, that in March 2021, we had a grids and general reports coffee talk where I walked everyone through a whole host of grid options, which also can be used in this screen for sorting, filtering, and tracking. So check out Minnesota Academy website for that coffee talk video and the slides and handouts and job aids that we shared there. And that should help with using this screen to track. Next screen, please. Okay, we're going to move on to out-of-home placement plan changes. So changes made to the out-of-home placement plan. So last spring, SSIS Business Operations gathered feedback from agencies regarding the out-of-home placement plan, and some of the feedback that was received was regarding the difficulty, redundancy of questions, length of the plans, and relevancy of certain sections in specific plans. We made several changes to the out-of-home placement plan for 23.1. And as a result of the feedback received, including caused issues with saving copy plans, screen consolidation, simplifying questions, reorganizing plans and plan sections, and updating help text. Screens and sections were consolidated. Sections and templates. So we needed to make sure that sections that had screens not relevant to all templates were together, and sections with screens relevant to all templates were together. Will be in the adoption guardianship, extended foster care, voluntary plan for treatment, and delinquency plans, as we were able to remove irrelevant sections from these plans or simplify them. Is statutorily required, but we believe we made improvements. The following slides outline some of the changes made.
Marcia, this is Molly. Do you want me to take over reading slides? And if there's any inconsistencies that I say, you can just
That would be,
clarify. Oh, you cut out again.
yes, please, Molly.
Okay. I can give it a whirl. I'm definitely not an expert in Marcia's work, but I can try and help out here. So are we ready to move to the next slide? Okay, so
Yes, Molly.
Okay. As previously stated, some of the received feedback from many agencies was about the wording of the questions. Many stated workers and families were having a hard time understanding the questions and asked for more plain language throughout the plan. So wording changes were made throughout the document to simplify the questions, making it easier for workers and families to understand the plan. Here you will see an example of simplified wording. Workers will see several wording changes made throughout each section of the out-of-home placement plan. Any follow-up you want to give on that, Marcia?
No.
Okay, next slide, please. All right, so here we have had several reports of workers receiving errors when they are trying to copy the out-of-home placement plan. This was because workers were typing in the school and grade into the education detail section of the out-of-home placement plan instead of having it merge into the field via the setup menu. The school and grade must now merge into the out-of-home placement plan from the education node. Workers must ensure the current school and current grade is added into the education node so that it can pull into the out-of-home placement plan prior to starting the out-of-home placement plan. This also applies to the individual family support plan. And next slide, please.
Hey, Molly. Slide. It's actually the same.
Oh, we can't hear you.
I'll put it in chat.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I think we're on slide 26 now. All right, so the school and grade will no longer be able to be entered at the education detail screen, but will need to be selected from the drop-down menu in the education section of the setup tab. The information will then merge into the education detail of the out-of-home placement plan as seen above. In the education detail of the out-of-home placement plan under the statement, the youth is enrolled in school, current school and current grade will be read only. All right, next slide, please. So changes were also made to the sibling detail screen and setup menu. The amount of information that will display in the sibling detail section will depend on whether the child has siblings and if any or all of the siblings are in out-of-home placement. The second question, are all the siblings in foster care placed in the same foster home or facility, will determine the questions that appear in the out-of-home placement plan document. On setup, if the child has siblings, sibling detail will be a screen in the plan. If all the siblings in foster care are placed together with the child, the only question in sibling detail section will be the list of the siblings in the out-of-home placement plan. If any of the siblings are in a different foster care placement than the child, or none of the child's siblings are in foster care placement, additional questions regarding sibling separation will appear in sibling detail section. In addition to the changes on the sibling detail, the out-of-home placement plan no longer has the sibling bill of rights section included in the out-of-home placement plan. Workers still need to provide the sibling bill of rights to all siblings, but they will not have a section to fill out in the auto home placement plan. Also in the adoption guardianship plan, the court approval for adoption has been renamed sibling adoption. Next slide. Right, in previous out-of-home placement plans, the supporting and preserving relationships and connections section had 4 screens to complete. In the new out-of-home placement plan, the 4 sections were combined into 2 sections: supportive and important relationships, and connections and visitation status and plan. These screens were combined due to similarity in questions. The supportive and important relationships and connections is a combination of the previous sections, supportive relationships and connections, and important relationship and connections. The questions remain the same, but they are together in the same section. The grid in the visitation status and plan section is a combination of the previous visitation plan and important relationships and connections grids. This was done so workers will only have to fill out 1 grid. And next slide. A new section, 10 best interest factors, has also been added and will consist of already existing and related screens previously found under the placement and permanency section and well-being section. It includes the following screens: 10 best interest factors, child youth placement preference, additional placement considerations, and parental authority and responsibility. They need to be separated so certain screens not relevant to some plan templates could be removed. This section is also now towards the beginning of the section. And just as a reminder, additional placement considerations only need to be filled out when the placement questions apply to the child. Next slide. Another reminder for the additional placement considerations screen: only the questions that have something typed in the white box will print. If nothing is in the box, that question will not print. Notice in the left picture, there is text typed in the best interest of expectant or parenting youth question, and below is the sex trafficked or at risk question. There is nothing typed in the box for the second question. Notice how on the right picture, only the best interest of the expectant or parenting youth appears in the plan before the next screen, parental authority and responsibility for the child in placement. The sex trafficked or at risk child question did not print because nothing is typed in the text box. Again, if none on the placement questions apply to the child, the screen does not need to be filled out. Next slide. Oh, I see we have a question from Sue Cleveland. Is it the case that a question will not print if no answer is given in all areas of the plan? I believe that is yes, they will not print if there is. Oh, sorry. Marcia clarified in the chat. So we can move on to the next slide. All right, slide 31 here. The placement and permanency sections of the auto home placement plan have now been organized into separate sections as previously stated. The other screens are now in the new individualized determination of needs section. The placement section contains conditions leading to placement and reasonable and active efforts to prevent placement screens. This section is no longer in the adoption, guardianship, delinquency, voluntary placement for treatment, and youth 18 to 21 plan templates. The permanency section contains the permanency plan and transfer of permanent legal and physical custody screens. The permanency plan screens has been reorganized to emphasize the agency's reasonable or active efforts to engage the child, family, relatives, and tribe in the development of the primary and concurrent placement plans. And if reunification is not the primary plan, to follow with the reasons why not and the agency's responsible and active efforts to determine the appropriate primary plan, including adoption. The question regarding the youth in the discussion for a TPLPC was removed from the TPLPC screen to the placement screen, since the youth's preferred permanent relative resource options are important components when reunification is not the primary permanency plan. Again, this was done so that irrelevant sections could be removed from certain plan templates. Help text has also been updated with more detailed information about answering the questions when reunification is or is not the primary permanency plan. Next slide. Changes were made to the delinquency and voluntary placement agreement for treatment out-of-home placement plans. The services and support for parents section was removed from these plans. These plan templates also do not have the placement section, which includes the screens, conditions leading to the placement, and reasonable or active efforts to prevent placement. Prior to 21.3 release of the out-of-home placement plan changes, these plan templates included the delinquency petition detail screen and access treatment and service detail. Those sections were added back into the plan to fulfill the question related to the sections removed.
There's a question in chat.
Yep, Joanne Shaw wrote, what about adoption plans? Are those two screens also removed? I don't know the answer, so if Marcia or somebody else has the answer. Oh, Marcia, I am not positive, but we'll check and get back to you, Joanne. All right, I think we can move on to the next slide then. So some final changes to the out-of-home placement plan. The services for parents, foster care providers, child section have been renamed to support and services for parents, foster care providers / child. This was added to remind workers this section is to include support for those individuals, not just services. Support and services for foster care providers was also added to the adoption guardianship plan. Workers will also see the section of the out-of-home placement plan have also been reordered, so the placement information is first, followed by services and support for parents, child, and foster parent. The out-of-home placement plans are always a work in progress. We hope these changes will make a positive difference in agency's important work with families. We will continue to work to improve the plan for families and workers. Right, and then on to the next slide, which I will be reading this slide as well. This is a fiscal change that we have updated the long message for proofing message 1232. We just wanted to encompass language to add that you could possibly see this proofing message if a rule for child placing agency is not on the title for a group provider search. as well as if the 4E subcode is possibly missing. So it's not a new code, or I'm sorry, a new proofing message, just a little language change. And I will pass it along to Sam.
This is Sam. There is a new HCPC coming for Chore Services with RAS code 623 in SSIS. This HCPC is S5121 for the daily unit rather than the 15-minute unit HCPC S5120 with Chore Services. Instructions are included on this slide from MMIS on how to authorize these services for either S5120 or S5121. The new daily unit HCPC S5121 is not release dependent. Our minute partners are currently working to complete testing on this new HCPC, and it will then be deployed to production as soon as it is ready. If you have any questions, you can send that into the SSIS help desk, and I will send it along to Ross to close us out.
Okay, as always, you have your SSIS resources available to you. Visit the SSIS resource page for the 23.1 release information, what's new, release notes, known defects, also for the SSIS worker documentation and the SSIS fiscal documentation. And just as a reminder of what was already mentioned earlier, there's the newly updated Adult Protection SSIS user guide available there as well. If you're looking for more resources in regards to the coffee talk, you can find it by reaching out to the help desk and also by looking at the Minnesota Child Welfare Academy SSIS training website. The next coffee talks for March is scheduled to be Tuesday, March 21st at 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Registration will be coming soon. We want to have a shout out for Darren Carlson with St. Louis County as the Mentor of the Month. Do me a favor, somebody, and look at the notes and say what Darren was nominated for.
Absolutely. I'm happy to jump in. We really just wanted to give a shout out to Darren this month because he really has done an excellent job of sending us help desk tickets that have all of the information needed. So person numbers, work group numbers, all of the things that we need so that we can really limit the amount of back and forth for tickets and really get data fixes and other kinds of things done much quicker. So we really just appreciated that. It's made the work on those things much easier. And so we just wanted to say thanks for attending to that. It is noticed and appreciated.
All right, well, that's the end of today's release. Coffee Talk. If you have any additional questions, now might be a good time to throw them into the chat or raise your hand and we can answer them.
Teresa asked a question. This is, any chance we will have in-person meetings again? It is so much easier to ask and answer questions in person.
So Teresa, I think that's a great question. I'll say that I think that we, kind of post-COVID, we are unsure what that landscape is going to look like. We will for sure continue to have more opportunities to be in conversation. And we're always happy to come out and visit people and do on-site meetings and things like that. As far as statewide mentor meetings, right now we do not have a plan for that. If that's something that people want, for sure can reach out to the help desk, to Heidi, to myself, and let us know kind of your thoughts about that. We do know that some agencies are really limiting travel, if any virtual opportunities exist, so that might be a barrier for having reasonable attendance for us to hold something. But we're always happy to look at what might best meet people's needs. And Jill had a question about using the pilot icon. So when folks are Sherburne, Stearns, and Des Moines Valley, when we have our statewide release pushed out tomorrow night, once that's done, then you can move from the pilot icon to the production icon. Great questions, everybody.
Joanne Shaw had another question regarding the EPR. If the QRTP facility is out of state, there is no Lindex link, and therefore EPRs will need to be manually entered. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, I think that is correct, right? There will be no Lindex link.
Marcia's going to check more on that. Well, I think that will do it then. Again, thank you everybody for joining. We know how valuable your time is, and we want to give some back to you. So enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks.